This is California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Supervisor Debbie Arnold of San Luis Obispo County. You have shown me some charts, graphs, maps that are really scary. I mean, it's that simple. If you look at drought conditions in our state, there are essentially 5 categories, D0 to D4. And D4 signifies exceptional drought. About 60% of the state is in D4, exceptional drought. Huge swaths of the state, virtually the entire coast, including the central coast in which we sit today.
That's right. And we've seen it, really that swath of land grow as the summer, moves on. So clearly we can see more of the state is having difficulty.
How does that feel for you? Here we are on the central coast today. What does that mean? What does that look like?
My responsibility and my focus has been on this county, San Luis Obispo County, and I have to say, in fact, yesterday at our Board of Supervisors meetings, we discussed this, what is San Luis Obispo County doing to be prepared. And we're in the situation now that we need to be prepared for the worst and just hope for the best. Will we have a good rain season next year? Will we alleviate some of it?
So let's talk about that. We know that there had been rumblings that maybe we would enter an El Nino season and that would bring us more rain. Now the meteorologists are suggesting it might not come. So for argument's sake, we don't see rain next year. What will happen to San Luis County?
San Luis County actually is preparing now for that circumstance. Of course, if it does happen, that's not the time to figure out what we're going to do. So I also, earlier we were discussing, you and I, some charts showing our surface water storage and what's going on there.
And let's talk about that. I think it's important. In this county, there are 4 above ground storage facilities. If you look at capacity, the largest one, Nacimiento, is at 19% capacity. It still has almost double, if not double, the amount as the other reservoirs because it's so large.
It's so large, and still 70,000 acre feet available. But for San Luis Obispo County, that is not really our water. Monterey County built that reservoir years ago for their water supply.
And I do want to say for our viewers, I learned what an acre feet is. Here's a good visual. Imagine a football field, fill it up with 1 foot of water. That's an acre feet.
That's right.
So there are 70,000 football fields, 1 inch high, or 1 foot high.
1 foot.
1 foot high of water. I think that's a good visual.
That's a good visual.
You would think that would be a lot, but is it?
Well, depending on what kind of outdoor watering and so forth. I mean, a house could use an acre foot of water a year per year. One house, depending on how many people live in the house, how large the landscaping is. And the same with an acre of vines, of grapevines, and that's kind of our irrigated crop.
You yourself are a farmer and you grow wine, grapes, thank you for that. I've had the wine, it's outstanding if I may say, off the record, but be that as it may. And so is that you need an acre foot per acre? And
that, again, that varies. It depends on where you are. It depends on, and the industry itself, the vineyard industry itself, is constantly trying to make improvements on efficiency of irrigation. So, but yeah, it's a ballpark.
What I'd like to do when we come back is talk more about this issue, talk about impacts, talk about the future, whether the county will need to start imposing fines under state law. Maybe they can. We'll explain that when we come back. For our viewers on HLN, thank you for joining us. For our other viewers, we'll be right back with Supervisor Debbie Arnold. So let's talk more about your industry. As an example, many farmers in North County are growing grapes, growing other items. We've heard about the need to drill deeper, dig deeper for water. Still happening?
We do see that happening as the vineyard industry expands countywide. But I'll remind your viewers, the Paso Robles aquifer, for example, is one of the largest in the United States.
I've heard that, yes.
So it's at 31 million acre feet. It's very, very large.
31 million acre feet, 31 million football fields.
Exactly.
1 foot high of water.
But the problem, of course, is that in this very large aquifer, not everyone has access to all of that water. They may be in a more confined aquifer.
Right. I mean, you've described to me, for example, if you look at the Paso Basin, parts of it seem fine.
Exactly.
But other parts are barren, and I don't understand the geology behind that. But if you're in an area that's barren, it's hard because you keep drilling deeper and deeper.
Well, you may not be able to.
Or at all, right.
You hit a rock formation.
Right.
So typically a household well would not be as drilled as deep.
Right.
So think of it as a household well being for household usage, and a commercial well that would irrigate commercial crops would be, of course, you'd spend a lot more money and have, so.
And that begs the question in terms of how we handle groundwater. As you know, there is legislation percolating, if I could say, in Sacramento.
That's right.
As we speak. We're not exactly sure what the permutations will be. There does seem to be some consensus that we need some form of groundwater regulation. Are you on board with that?
Well, I believe that we do need to take a look at this, and I mean, eventually it's a resource, and the access to that resource, we do need to take a look at, safe yield is what they call it, in anybody's aquifer. You don't want to just continue to deplete it until you've ruined that resource. You need to understand what you're safe, how much can we harvest out of the ground and still, maintain the equilibrium there of the aquifer.
The question becomes, though, and this is what's being debated throughout the state, is who's regulating?
Exactly.
And some counties have already regulated, others have not. The question becomes, should the state be the regulator, or should the localities be the regulator? Or if the localities don't regulate, should the state then regulate for the localities?
Yeah, and even the state is recognizing, just in our county, just in the aquifer I'm most familiar, which was just the Paso Robles Basin, there's so much diversity, and it's the geography under the ground. So the state's even recognizing that local regulation, if it's necessary, or local management is the best way to go.
It does appear that that's the consensus, but what happens, or what should happen, if a locality just doesn't regulate for whatever reason? Do you think the state should be allowed to step in?
And there's two ways that we can see government stepping in. One would be the state, or a different layer of government coming in to manage a groundwater basin, and the other way is the adjudication. In other words, there could be our political
courts,
system deciding, or our legal system deciding, and people debate. That's a constant debate.
What do you think? I don't know what's better.
And again, I think it just depends on the basin and the circumstances and the water users, or the diversity of the water users because you know how politics works. It's kind of the more populate centers, or the biggest voice kind of wins the day typically. And sometimes when it comes to property or property rights or water rights, some people, if they're a small minority or a very rural area, they may be looking to the courts to ensure that they may not have a big voice in politics, but they may need to ensure their rights that way.
It's remarkable how diverse this state is.
That's right.
I recently had a wonderful time visiting my aunt and uncle who live in Nevada City, in Nevada County. Rural and beautiful, and a mere hour from Sacramento, a big bustling city, and yet it's only an hour away. And yet you can tell the people, the feelings, the desires are quite different.
Absolutely, and that's a perfect example. If there was a little pot of water, especially during a drought, we don't argue over water when it's not scarce, but if there was a pot of water and a city the size of Sacramento wanted it, or the rural little small town where your family lives, I think we know who would win that argument in the political arena. So sometimes some people need to go look for, hey, wait, I have rights here too, even though my voice is small in the political arena.
Her name is Debbie Arnold. She is a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Luis Obispo County. I'm Brad Pomerance, and this is California Edition.